Hey everybody, and welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 Pantheon Rise of the Fallen development stream. I am your host, David Roenick-Schlau. With me is our creative director, Chris Joppa-Perkins. Say what's up,
Hey everybody.
Chris. And coming to us via voice will be our lead programmer, Kyle Olson. Behind the scenes, Mr. Ben Dean will be handling things. Tonight we got an awesome show for you guys. We're going to be talking about NPC combat tactics. Why don't we get straight to it, Chris?
Straight to it. I like it.
Straight to it.
So yeah, we're glad to be back with everybody. We're here for another stream to show off some of our development progress over the last month. And this evening, our focus is on the work we've done specifically on our NPC combat AI. And that means improving and expanding the underlying systems that allow our NPCs to make interesting, effective, sometimes unpredictable decisions in the heat of battle. If you've been following our development, you know that this is a pretty significant milestone on our march to alpha. And it's something we're just super excited to share, and not just share, but to show in action. So to that end, three of us got together last night, myself on a Dire Lord, Kyle, who's with us tonight on a Shaman, and Tyler on a Wizard. And we hopped into the Isle of Infinite Storm, and we picked a fight with some Torn Elves. And we're going to show some of that. Now, disclaimer, the Isle of Infinite Storm is a 24-person raid zone, and our measly trio was really no match. So we made ourselves immortal, and we spent that time focusing on showcasing the combat in the NPC AI, not on top-shelf execution of class play. So we're watching this footage not to see, three people taking on and conquering a raid zone by themselves. We're watching this to see specifically how the NPC AI is taking shape and developing. To do this properly, I've asked our lead programmer, Kyle Olson, to join me tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the code as we move along, but the main attraction is in the game footage that we've recorded and we'll be showing in action. So let's get started. Kyle, I asked you to make our NPC combat AI more robust, and we don't want to just see NPCs using cool-looking abilities. We want to see them actually making meaningful decisions with those abilities, and we don't want to just see a healer NPC healing a wounded ally. We want to see them doing more than that. Maybe it's not just healing the ally. Maybe it's breaking them out of a stun or out of a mez, or maybe it's calling it nearby,
dispelling, whatever it might be.
Dispelling, exactly.
First off, let me say,
take it away, man.
My cat has decided to try and take the spotlight. I don't know if you heard her popping off a little bit there in the intro. So she pipes up. I apologize, but
she's excited.
Yeah, so we've been trying to improve how AIs respond in the heat of combat, how much of an impact that they feel like they could have in terms of a decision-making process, making them feel more alive in a way. So one of the things that we've had forever, pretty much, since we've had NPCs in the game, is the ability for them to cast ability. They've had a threat. They'll cast that ability at whoever has the highest threat. And we've had the ability to augment that a little bit, limit them so they can only cast it when things are at a certain amount of health or whatnot. But really having a true spot for a designer to create some really custom targeting logic, like targeting the third person on the hate list of this mob that is a certain class that has a certain amount of mana with this specific flag, stuff like that. So just fully custom condition creation for combat. It's kind of what we were diving into. And up until this point, it's just been an AI has a list of abilities. They'll randomly pick something from that list of abilities and try and cast it on whoever has the highest threat. Now, this new system that we've developed sort of is a jump-off point right before they begin that cast to let them choose a different person to cast on. And you'll see lots of examples of that here coming up. So can we show the first target graph? All right, so this is which one is this? This is the Torn, this is the stun for the Eldritch, the Torn Eldritch. So this ability describes a stun that this mob will try to do on a healer within 25 yards that is already casting something. So this AI is constantly looking around it for this ability to find a healer to interrupt with its stun, essentially. So as a healer, you need to be conscious that if this guy isn't currently doing something or casting or crowd controlled in some way, if I start casting, he might look over and nuke me for half my health and stun me for 3 seconds. It's the kind of thing that we're getting at.
Well said. Yeah, we're going to roll into the footage here. And so the way this is going to work, it's kind of we'll do a rhythm here where we'll talk a little bit about the underlying code and the node graphs that support these different targeting conditions. And then we'll show it in action, because that's really the best way to see kind of how this works. So let's go ahead and roll into that footage and check it out.
Sure, which was the next one?
We'll do this one first. All right, so let's talk about what's happening here. First of all, we've picked a fight with the Tauren Eldritch, and I don't know if you caught that, but right at the beginning, if you get too far away from the Eldritch, like just happened there with Sacred, they will cast an ability called Creeping Shackles, which actually grabs you and causes you to walk slowly towards the Eldritch, so they pull you back in. Boom, there it is. Okay, so we just got the interrupt on the heal. Kyle was trying to heal, and he interrupted that heal, and now Kyle just ran behind me. I'm going to turn here and get him in view in just a second, but he just ran away, and now he's out of range, and then you see the Eldritch turns and starts pulling him back in, and while that's happening, Kyle is stunned. Essentially, he can't use any abilities, can't move, and he's just pulling him straight in.
I feel like I'm going to get in trouble with that spell.
I can almost guarantee it. Nice. Very cool. Now again, these are the kind of foundational combat decisions that we want NPCs to be able to make. The degree and the frequency and the speed of like the synapse of response, it is something that can be dialed, but the point here is not to completely shut down players, obviously. If NPCs were immediately and always shutting down heals and stunning and CCing, nothing would be able to happen. So this is in a state right now where it's not interrupting every heal, but it's something that you need to be mindful of while you're fighting. It's something that you can't just rotely, like, I'm just going to heal all the damage that my tank is soaking up. I have to be mindful that I could be interrupted at just the wrong time, and so I need to be thinking about what are the other auxiliary abilities that I need to be using to minimize the risk of that.
The fight is entirely learnable in that sense, and you can counter and cast at strategic times so that as a healer you're not getting nuked and stunned. So it's definitely outplayable.
Exactly. Cool. All right, let's pull up the next image, and we'll talk about this one. We're actually going to go back in here. The footage we're going to show after this is also with the Eldritch, and it's going to show off a kind of a cool other aspect of their kit in combat. So Kyle, yeah, let's go ahead and talk through this one.
Sure. So this is the target enemy far away. Oh, this was the other graph that was associated with the fixate. So when somebody gets far away from the Eldritch, he will attempt to put a curse on them and fixate them and pull them back in. And this target graph describes looking for somebody in combat with an NPC that has mana that isn't already fixated, so that this NPC isn't trying to fixate the same person over and over and over, and then filtering by somebody that's within 8 to 50 meters away. And then whoever is still left after all of that filtering and culling away of who I'm in combat with, we just choose a random person, and that's who gets that cast on them. The other thing to note is that very last output target, which is sort of like, I've made a decision, here is my choice, I will output who I'm going to cast on into that node. If you uncheck that fallback to default, and we don't provide a target to cast on, the AI will completely skip this ability from being considered for casts altogether. So if you enabled that, this AI, if we don't do some custom selection logic, will just fall back to whoever their highest threat is, usually the tank, unless, Sacred's playing.
Nice. All right, let's pull up the image 3 there and talk about the next ability we're going to see in action. Cool.
All right, this is the so this is the ally purge. So if an AI sees a friendly target around them that is either stunned or mesmerized, they can use this target graph to dispel them, right? So you'll see that in the next video coming up. You'll see me attempting to mesmerize one of the extra ads that we pull.
Let's go ahead and run it.
The ad that we're fighting initially will see that and cast Purge on his friend to get him out.
Let's go ahead and pull up that video. So again, engaging with the Eldritch here. And as Kyle just said, the difference in this footage is a little bit into the fight here, we're going to get an ad. And we're going to attempt to CC that ad, mesmerize that ad, and then we'll see the Eldritch deal with that. Okay, so we've got an Eyeless that's joined the fray. Kyle's got
unintentionally getting fixated and pulled in, so I'm trying to hide in the corner.
Yep.
Panicking over threat.
Oh, you just got stunned. You're trying to heal yourself. Yep. He's pulling somebody into him. Yep, Kyle, you got pulled in again. I think this was like the second time you were trying to mesmerize.
Yep, I could not get it off. He kept CCing me.
I love that ability because you walk in and then you just kind of follow him around until it wears off. All right, so Eyeless mezzed, boom, turns, purges the mez, and the Eyeless is back in the fight. Again, so just for the sake, this is actually a good strategy that we have here, but for the sake of showcasing the functionality, I'm pulling the Eldritch forward a little bit to allow him to have line of sight to the Eyeless, and then he'll throw the Purge again.
That's awesome. So he's basically dispelling the crowd control.
Yep. And in the encounter design, we can decide at our whim, is this a full on dispel, like any kind of, CC, any kind of hard CC, it'll purge, or is this, depending on what NPC this is, maybe it's just a root, maybe it's just a stun, maybe it's not even a magic based thing. Oh, Kyle just got forgot about that part. So right at the end of this fight, do we have a way to fast forward these, or do they have to just play? They just, okay. Well, let's let this run through again, because you may have missed that, but right at the end, that's something you'll see a lot more as we go through this footage, is we're actually very, very high up off the ground. So positioning is really, really important when fighting up here, especially because the Eyeless and then one of the NPCs we're going to see here in a bit have a lot of ways to knock you off of this thing if you're not careful. But yeah, at the end of the footage, once the Eldritch dies, look at the Eyeless, and you'll see the unfortunate event there.
So the Eyeless has a melee bash ability that, when it goes off, has a knockback associated with it as well.
Yep.
So I pulled aggro, and unfortunately, got a bit of a knockback.
So it's cool to see that line of sight plays a part in this sort of tactic as well.
Yes, you can interrupt the Purge. You definitely can. And so that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, where we could have done a much better job of shutting some of these things down. But for the sake of really showcasing, giving the NPCs the freedom to show off, the different things they can do. And then that's just another facet of tuning as we go along, which is, how much of a kit do we want players to have to be able to shut these things down? How often are NPCs using them? But yeah, this was really meant to just showcase what they're capable of. There was one little knockback. Okay, so here we go. Eldritch, we're going to burn the Eldritch down. As soon as the Eldritch drops, then then so does Kyle. Which, again, you would learn fighting up here like that. That is horrible positioning, Kyle.
You're not even trying to get threat back. What is this?
No, because I want to see.
Bye.
It goes.
Later.
Nice. All right, cool. Very cool. Let's go to image 3A. Start talking through some of these. So just to set up the context here, we're going to go to a different NPC battle. The first two clips were on the Eldritch. Now we're going to take a look at the Eyeless and the Stormblade in action. And I'll leave it at that. And let's do just a really simple overview of these, Kyle, and save like the actual reveal for what they're going to do once we get to the footage.
Sure. So really it just boils down as these two mobs have abilities that synergize off of each other. One is looking for the other one to be on a target, and if it finds it, it allows it to go off, and you get kind of an added bonus overlapping effect when it does go off. So really this graph is saying, look for somebody in 6 meters range, basically in melee range, that is currently off balance and is an enemy of mine. And just give me a random person. If there's multiple around me like that, go ahead, just give me one of them. I don't care.
Yep. And that, I mean, if you've probably heard me talk about state manipulation before with player classes, but also it's something very much that we want NPCs to have as well. And so It's a great example of state manipulation here, the interplay between the off balance state and then actually being knocked down. So we'll see that here in a sec.
It's something to keep in mind. The playing between different states being something that NPCs do and players do. There's fundamentally no difference between an ability that an NPC casts and an ability that a player casts. We can, with GM powers, we can go ahead and slash cast anything that you see an NPC doing ourselves, and anything that you see us doing, we can slash you cast and make an NPC do that as well. So it's very shared functionality between the entire system.
Yep, let's head to the next image.
So this is a really simple one. This is just saying, give me somebody that is in combat with me that has mana. That's pretty much it. This is used by a couple different abilities that the NPCs have. But you can see they get pretty complex and they get pretty simple depending on what they're trying to do.
Super broad and then super focused. And the variety of that spectrum is what creates really interesting environments and encounters. If you have an NPC that's looking for someone with mana, then that's very different than an NPC looking for someone with mana who is a healer archetype who is currently casting a defensive ability. Mm-hmm. But that's an example of how broad and also how granular we can get. All right, next image.
Okay, so this is, give me somebody in combat that has mana that is currently not pepper sprayed right now, which is a form of CC in the game. And just give me the first person that you find that meets that criteria. And you'll see in the next video coming up, a single NPC utilizing the find random mana user and find random mana user that's not pepper sprayed to have some kind of interesting bouncing around mechanics. Let's
talk about pepper spray for a second. So
sure.
When we say pepper sprayed, we're talking about it's really an animation designation. So we've got, a stun or an incapacitated effect where you're stunned, you can't move, you can't perform actions, but there are different animations that govern that. So a stun looks different from being mesmerized, which looks different from being pepper sprayed, which is, this kind of like I'm holding my eyes and I'm writhing around. So it's giving us a little bit more flavor.
It's a form of crowd control with a different flavor of animation on it, right?
Right. Yep. All right, let's hit that next footage. So this is the Eyeless and the Stormhand. So this, we start off this fight, just the Eyeless. The Eyeless is pretty standard fare. It's a tank. He's got a kind of an armor sundering ability with strike of breaking. He's got his shoulder crash, which is stunning me, or it has a chance, a 50% chance to stun me. and knock me back a little bit, and then he's got a cleave. But by itself, not anything too crazy. The issue is when the Stormhand joins the fray, then you're going to start seeing a lot of chaos for our little trio here because of the targeting graphs we just talked about, where the Stormhand is has two abilities. The smoke trick. See, okay, let me stop. So you see how I'm kneeling down there, or just got knocked down. The whole time I was fighting with the Eyeless, it was pretty standard. Soon as the Stormhand joins the fray, the Stormhand has an ability that puts me into an off-balance state. You'll see it on the little debuffs that pop up. It looks like a scale, a weighted scale. Once I'm in an off-balance state, the Eyeless is going to see that and then use his knockdown. So there's off-balance, boom, and I just got knocked down. So that's an example of the synergy that you're going to start seeing, between the different NPCs. What you're also seeing in the background there was Kyle smoke trick, pepper sprayed, and then we've got the Eyeless popping behind me with the shadow step, and then popping over to Kyle for a lightning blade attack, which electrifies him. So that's what I mean by chaos. We go from a pretty standard tank and spank with the Eyeless. Now the Stormhand joins the fray. Healers are getting pepper sprayed. Healers are getting electrocuted. There's shadow steps behind the tank. The tank's getting knocked down. With the introduction of one NPC, we're seeing all kinds of new effects happening in the heat of battle here. So it creates a very cool dynamic. And what I love about it is the kind of situations you get into when a Stormhand joins the fray with an Eyeless is going to be different than if an Eldritch joins the fray with an Eyeless, or if an Eldritch and a Stormhand are fighting together. And certainly if you get into a situation with all three, it begins to prove the point of how important good crowd control is in Pantheon, for sure, and also being very mindful of what NPCs are capable of and making sure that you have auxiliary things in mind to deal with unexpected mechanics.
I challenge anyone to say that streaming an MMO would be boring. This is crazy.
Wait till you see the next one.
Yeah, we haven't even. Yeah, but what I love about this is, Pantheon is not an action combat game, and there's been some criticism in the past, especially in the past, about, just this doesn't look very engaging to watch. And MMOs are, I would say on the whole, they're not as engaging and exciting to watch necessarily, unless you really know the game and you understand what you're seeing and whatnot. But what I love about this fight, especially when the Stormhand joins, is that it's not an action game, but there's a lot going on. And when you talk about, knockbacks and what we're going to see here in a second with pushes and pulls and repositioning of NPCs, where the Stormhand's shadow stepping behind me and then shadow stepping to the healer and doing a lightning blade and then throwing pepper spray out, it gets very involved, but never like frantic. It's just there is a lot of dynamic action going on at certain points, depending on what you're dealing with. And of course, the more NPCs that you can lock down, the more you can step that chaos back down to a manageable level. Smoke tricked Kyle again, burning him down. That Stormhand is a lot of fun to fight, but man, he's tough.
Indeed.
Cool.
Hey, at least Kyle managed to stay on the platform this time.
We did. Cool. All right, let's go to image 4. So we're coming up to the last fight we're going to showcase. We've actually got two pretty nice chunks of footage we're going to show here, and super excited about that fight. But yeah, let's walk through these, Kyle.
Yes, this is an example of using a target graph to do a little bit more work than you might expect it to be able to do. So you would normally just expect a target graph to decide that I'm going to pick a target or not, and that's it. But this is, we wanted to be able to say, only cast this if I'm in combat with X or more people for a certain ability in the fight you're about to see coming up. And at the time, we didn't have a specific condition that you could just tag onto an ability and get that functionality. We do now, but we needed to just build a custom condition essentially with the target graph. So we did that. So all this says is, give me all the people that I'm in combat with, give me the number, the count of that, and check if it's greater than 2. If B is greater than A, you'll get the flow port out on the right side there of the int greater than node, and then you'll just choose a random entity and output that entity. But if, say, you only had 2 people in combat with you, then B would not be greater than A, and execution of this graph would just halt there, and you would not output a target, thus this ability would not be cast by the AI. So it's sort of like a dual-purpose target selection here. It's doing a target selection, but also doing a target selection based on conditionals that I'm arbitrarily deciding as a designer on this graph.
Nice. All right, let's hit the next image.
All right. So this is actually a real ability now. This is not a target graph for an ability. This is, as an AI, I have gone through my target graph, and now I'm going to cast this ability. So you get a callback on the left there. It's different from what you saw before. It's still a green entry start node, but it's just an on-cast complete callback. The first thing that we do here is just play some visual effect. And like you saw before in some of the other ones, we do an AoE selection of all the entities in a radius around me of 15 meters. And then we filter them by my caster's relationship to them. So here we take into account things like your faction standings, like things like charm, other things that would make you offensive or not offensive to any given entity, get filtered away based on that node. And then after that, you see we actually have the ability to do arbitrary loops over collections of data. So we're feeding in a list of entities here that we've already filtered away to be enemies. And then for each person in that list, we're doing a bit of spell damage, 500 curse damage specifically. You can see we're feeding in a number there. And after that, we check to see if that was a successful hit. So if I have like an immunity on or something like that, or I fully resist the process spell damage, it won't continue past that check combat result is hit node. And then after that, so if it did successfully hit us for some amount of damage, we'll do a knockback. So what you're seeing here is effectively a melee-ish range AoE stomp ability that does a bunch of curse damage, and if it hits you, does a knockback from the origin point of the caster. And we'll see that in the next fight up here.
Did you talk about how the knockback, specifically the closer you are to the source of the knockback, the more force?
Can you flip back to the previous one really quick? So on that simple knockback node, there are a couple other options that you can see. The first toggle there is force fall off with distance. So we have a max distance that we can feed in. In this case, we're feeding in 10 meters, and a max force that we can feed in, which is how much of a knockback an entity will receive. And this could be an NPC or a player. It works on both of them. So I saw somebody ask if we could knock an NPC off of something. You can, but it's not going to be a good time, really. I'll just say that. So this allows you to fall back how much of a force is applied to an entity based on how close you are to the center of that knockback, essentially just with that Boolean. And a bunch of other stuff like interrupt casting, and if you're right near the edge of that radius, how much is the minimum amount of force that we apply to somebody, so it's never just like a little 1 centimeter nudge to them. We can give them a minimum amount of force. Stuff like that. Yeah, just other little plug and play things.
Very cool. Let's go ahead and just hop to the footage. I want to get back to seeing some things in action. So this fight, this is one of the prophets, and you're going to see very quickly that this is a different caliber of NPC. This is, again, this is a 24-person raid zone, and purposely not going into a lot of detail about, some of the context of the zone. We want to leave that some mystique intact. But this would be a, considered a mini boss, if you will, in a raid context. But this NPC, it really just the joy of watching this fight. So here we see the nightmarish push happening, and I'm so close to the edge. You see me spamming Essence Thief. Boom! I got it off right before I fell. Stayed in line of sight just enough to get back into battle. But then he pulls us all in, all 3 of us, and then there's the big explosion knockback. Beautiful ability. Positioning, again, very, very key in this fight. You've got a push that locks you in place and pushes you for the duration. And if you I won't spoil it, but you'll see me make some mistakes here on that front a few times. But love the fact that with something like Essence Thief, the Dire Lord has a way to, clutch, get back in and not eat a death from the falling distance.
Good old 20-second mesmerize on your healer back there. Only having one healer for this mini boss is not recommended. You need somebody else to dispel you out of that.
Yeah. He's pulling us all in. Yep.
And after the pull-in, he will always cast that Demise. So you've got a second to blink away if you have an ability or pop an immunity or something like that. But if you run away, you won't make it all the way out of the AoE, but you will reduce some of the knockback effect that you get.
Yep. Oh, he just started to cast his mass. His mass mez. We killed him before he was able to. Cool. Let's actually roll the second footage of that fight.
As a take two, same fight.
Yes. Take two, same fight. I blinked in, and of course he decided to turn things around on me. Essence Thief did, and then he immediately pushes me right off the edge. It was beautiful. Obviously, had I not been immortal, I would have died there. That would have been a wipe, a raid wipe.
We're all immortal in this fight, just because we died several times.
He does his AE pull and actually drags me across the ground down there. So again, if that happened in a real raid, there'd be some significant reshuffling going on. I just teleported back up to join back in here.
Cheater.
Yeah.
Dirty GM.
Yeah, that's right. That dispel. So the Eldritch has a defensive dispel. So that he's breaking ally out of stun or out of mez. But the Prophet actually has an offensive purge that removes 2 beneficial effects, and you'll see it's pretty nasty because the Shaman especially is a hot, heavy healer, and I almost always have 2 hots on me ticking, and that dispel just chews them right up. That Praetum ability right there, boom. Ate up
first mesmerizes the healer and then purges all the hots off the tank. So we can design stuff like that makes them seem smarter than they obviously are. We can inject that bit of human touch in it. Obviously you want to CC a healer before trying to dispel something. Or obviously you want to do your big AoE after you've pulled all targets close to you. It just makes sense.
Stayed another drop there. He's okay, so he's at 40% health. At 40% health, he does his Mass Fascination, which is an AE mez. And then he'll pick a random target after that and engage with them. He chose me.
There's a big threat scramble on anybody he's in combat with, so everybody has an equal chance of becoming the new high threat target.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So that is I'm sure for all of you, what feels like too short of a showcase, but I think it's enough to impart the power and the implications that come from getting this in place. It's was number 3 on our March to Alpha roadmap. Doesn't mean that the first 2 things are completely done. It just means that we're working on these first 3 items in tandem. And as you can see, we've made some really, really good progress on this front. We've always talked about Pantheon being a challenging game. And up until now, a lot of that challenge has come from just ramping up simply the health and the damage capabilities of NPCs to create a sense of challenge because we've not had the tools and the guts underneath to really flex a lot of the strategic depth that we want to see in this game. But what we're able to show now is that we are bringing some of that strategic depth up to the fore, and we are able to view our different NPCs and the encounters that we create from simple low-level encounters, which would have much more simplistic logic going on, all the way to massive scale battles, or some of the really cool ideas we have for in-game encounters, and all of the different things we can do, and the way NPCs can synergize, players can synergize with each other. Our hope really is that in the coming months that you're really going to be able to see a lot of this taking shape, like the tapestry of Pantheon's overall challenge and the depth and the sophistication of the combat encounters really starting to take shape. So, yeah, do you have anything else you want to add on that front, Kyle, before we move into some patch notes and then a little bit of Q&A?
No, I think you nailed it. Yeah, but if anybody has questions that pertain specifically to the technical side of those graphs, feel free to ask those too. I'll be here to answer them.
Right on. Yeah, we'll take some Q&A in a little bit here.
Yep.
That was awesome also to see, I think that was our first real kind of view of the zone. We saw some new armor there on the art side, so some cool stuff, some cool little beans there.
Yeah. I love the way that set looks.
Okay, well, ready for some patch notes? Wait, I got a song tonight.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's see if this actually.
Here we go.
Guitar and everything, nice.
Yeah, let's see. I actually can't play, so we'll see if this goes. Ready? Patch notes, it's what we've got. Okay.
What?
Oh.
What? You only get one verse.
Oh.
Where's the chorus?
Yeah, I thought we were just getting started.
No, maybe next time.
Maybe we'll just build on that one from month to month. All right. Cool. All right. So there's a long list of stuff here. I'm going to go through these quickly. Feel free to pull up the VOD and go back through these more slowly if you want to get the all the details. So here we go. Added support for modifying cast times and cost per ability from buff graphs. Shaman Surging Power mastery upgrade is now fully functional. Wizard Arcane abilities no longer strip runes from the other schools. We had some significant updates to Halnir Cave and some of the deeper additions to that area that we've been wanting to bring online, that we've already had one pre-alpha test with those in, and our next one will hopefully see more and more players moving deeper and deeper in and uncovering kind of more of what's going on there. We've made some class-based changes. So, for example, Direlord Thresh Bleed now scales based on the target's health. Also, the Direlord Sanguine Blade ability now gives more health when the player's health is lower and less health when the player's health is higher. So, putting in a little bit more of some, weight to the decision of when to use those abilities. We have some new stats that we expose in our NPC templates and our overall tuning and balance passes that Tyler's been doing. We're at the point of starting to introduce some of the newer, not newer, but some of the secondary stats into that balancing framework. Things like special resistances, hit rating, dodge, things like that. We made a pretty significant change to our spell power, where before our spell power to actual bonus damage and healing for spells was 5-1. So it required 5 points of spell power to equate to 1 bonus point of damage or healing. And we've adjusted that to now be a true 1-to-1. So 1 point of spell power equaling 1 point of bonus damage and healing. We added a stuck and an unstuck command. We did that actually in prep for the 30-hour session to make sure players had a way to deal with unforeseen issues if there wasn't a support staff person available. Some terrain tile addressable updates. more robust line of sight calculation testing, some pretty significant changes to Wizard as well that we'll get into a little bit later when we can show some of that in action. This is just some boring stuff. Fix for stealth fading, conflicting with models that have a constant fade amount already set. We did make an adjustment to where the climate-based screen effects will be fully mitigated and invisible with max acclimation in that particular climate. We did a lot more work on the target graphs integration, which you've seen, the fruit of that most of this evening. A little bit of an update to ThroneFast with adding a few more waymaking POI objects, just to help a little bit with orientation around the zone. Had our first draft of new NPC ability loadouts coming online. Again, we've looked at that tonight. Several updates and improvements to NPC rotation. So it was important to us where, for example, the Eldritch earlier, when he's going to purge a Mez from his ally, he actually turns to that ally and purges it. So small thing, but a big thing. We added, filter nodes for classes and roles, and sort nodes for threat. So just more kind of additions to the ability tool and the graph framework for the ability system. More improvements to entity rotation at attack targets, not just for spells, but for actual attack orientation as well. I'm going over things that are just, there's very, probably would just sound redundant. Hooked up the win system to players again. So the win system being, Kyle, that's what we actually use the win system in our push and our pull, right?
Yep, same exact systems. So it was initially built for the Sleepless Fight, but now it's just been repurposed on the newer player physics and exposed in the ability and buff tools, so we can push entities around at will with it.
Beautiful. Yeah. So it feels so good. Lots of improvements to the client's handling of different problematic situations. So handling of missing abilities, or when the client wasn't getting what it needed, how it handles that. We've fixed and cleaned up several things with client tooltip calculations for abilities. So we want you to be able to hover over an ability on your bar and see, based on your current attributes, based on your current spell power, your current hit rating, etc. We want that to all be reflected in real time on the ability tooltips, so that you know how much damage, how much healing, the duration, things like that of an ability. So it's a nice cleanup on that. The immunity system coming online. So it's something that I would say probably is 90% there. We just have some testing to do before we call it fully implemented and kind of a true feature. Immunity just being things like when we have mini bosses that we want to make immune to stun or immune to CC, things like that. That's going to be coming back online soon. By the way, just if you're not a VOD person and you're not even really tracking with me anymore, I've lost you. We will be incorporating these patch notes in the producer's letter, and our goal is also to have a spot on the website where we can post these and you can read them at your leisure. Lots of cool animation polish. I think I saw a few comments on that. I say it almost every stream that animation polish is ongoing. You can expect that to continue. And so simple things like we made some adjustments to the non-combat idle animation. So when you're just kind of standing there, we also got it to where if you don't have a weapon equipped, your hands aren't constantly clenched. They actually relax. And so you'll open your hands if nothing is in them, and you'll close them if you're holding something. And several more several more player animation polish improvements that we've made. Cool. And then direct heals can no longer resurrect a target. So I'm sorry, healers. And some defensive code was put in around network time loops, and we have, again, just lots of AI casting and ability checks, and a more robust system there for just making sure that things don't go off the rails. And lastly, we have the Monk being implemented. I think I am going to I'm going to say that my hope, my strong hope, and my everything as strong as I can possibly say it without guaranteeing that next stream we do, I would love for it to be a Monk showcase. We're going to be getting that class in here soon, and implementation is already well underway. Monk Combat Resource, the Chi, the Chakra Gates. It's really exciting. I'm so excited about that class coming online. So that's been a lot of work we've been doing lately as well, and excited for our pre-alpha testers to get their hands on that. And just to reiterate, the Monk, the Ranger, and the Summoner are the three classes that we are focusing right now. And you can expect us to keep pushing those three classes forward until they are done as soon as we are able.
Awesome. You ready to do some Q&A here, Chris? And Kyle.
Indeed.
You ready, Kyle? I don't know if
Yep.
Kyle's still... Okay.
Yep.
The voice from above. Okay, let's start out. I'm not going to say people's names because I'd rather get to more questions. Will mobs run out of mana like PCs can?
Yes.
Okay, that was an easy one. Are there plans for certain classes to have things like crowd control break abilities where they may be able to break out of things like that push ability?
Yes, there will be classes that if they themselves are not currently CC'd, they will have some abilities to do that for other classes. And then there could also be special relics or other item-based clicky type things that could potentially, depending on the power or the potency of that particular item, could allow you to actually break yourself out of stealth or out of CC even while you are CC'd. So yes, there will be some ways to do that for others or for yourself.
I'm going to stick to questions dealing with the topic at hand, so I apologize to those of you who asked other questions. We'll get to those at another time. Okay, moving on. Are there mechanics in play to prevent unfortunate overlap of NPC abilities?
Yeah, you saw one of them with the Stormhand there. So he will not do a pepper spray or a smoke trick and an electrify blink on the same target. It looks for specific states before using them so that they don't overlap. It's up to designers to allow it or disallow it.
Awesome. Does a mob's disposition override some of this combat AI, and are there some hidden effects that a disposition may have to adversely affect how they interact with their kind? I guess the example they're saying is a wizard-hating disposition won't assist his wizard ally. Not that we have we have a wizard-hating disposition quite yet.
See where they're going there. Yeah, so that's actually a really good point that came to my mind a couple of times throughout the evening, and I just forgot to verbalize it. But what we've showcased tonight is it is representative of kind of the foundational game-wide infrastructure to support the full gamut of what we want to accomplish with NPC AI and all the implications that flow from that. It also is specifically the foundation for building our dispositions. So, for example, the mana crazed disposition is an NPC that is bent on. I'm thinking of like the quote from Terminator where the guy's like he's never going to stop coming. He's never going to give up. He's never going to stop to just like make the point like this is not going to end until this thing is destroyed. That's the idea with Mana Craze, is that Mana Craze NPC is going to essentially be immune to taunt, immune to any kind of like, hey, leave them alone and come focus me. They're going to dial in on a mana user and are just going to be relentless until destroyed. or CC'd or whatnot. But so that's you can already see the support for something like that in place. And the other half of the disposition implementation is the tooling to support more of a kind of a wider scale inclusion of dispositions at spawn time or when an NPC's data is set up and created, that they would intrinsically have the ability to spawn with multiple allotted dispositions at spawn time. Right now, we can say, okay, we want this particular NPC to have a chance to have a spawner with like a normal and then a mana crazed version of it, but we want to be able to from a more data-wise perspective, set them up with a random opportunity to spawn with any number of dispositions and up to 3 traits at a time as well, which kind of a rabbit trail here because the disposition and the trait system go hand in hand. And that's something we can get into in more detail when we do, a showcase on those systems. But yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, when deploying this logic, is it sort of like procedural generation for NPCs, or will there be loadouts be manually curated like per zone?
Manually curated, for sure.
Manually curated. Okay. How is the pet system progressing? Hey, who snuck that one in there?
We have not started work on the pet system yet. It's still in queue.
Okay.
Let me just verify that Kyle's here. So that's my understanding is that while there's probably like some hooks and some like fundamental things that the pet system eventually will rely on that we've gotten in place, but as far as like actual focus on the pet system, we haven't gotten there yet. But maybe you can speak to anything that is currently in place that might be
exactly like pathing code, large parts of path calculations and things like that will be reusable, but the idea of having a friendly entity that is under your control that has a separate pet bar and abilities and auto that kind of stuff just has not been developed at all. No.
There you go, people.
And these are major milestone things, right? So we did a stream tonight dedicated to NPC combat awareness. It's a major milestone item. We've made significant progress, and this is our chance to showcase that. When pets are ready, we're going to showcase it. When the monk is ready, we're going to showcase it. As these things come online and they're demonstrable, we're going to showcase it. So, again, we've talked through our roadmap to alpha, what those items are, and I mean, even in a prioritized sense, like this is the path we're following. So we are living in that era right now where we're developing the NPC combat awareness and AI. We're working to implement the monk, the ranger, and the summoner. And the summoner relies on the pet system. So the pet system is in the near future of implementation.
Cool. I'm gonna a couple more here. Will the rest of the team be able to use these AI tools without needing programming assistance? I think they're worried about time here.
Yes.
Yes.
That's kind of the whole point of spending the extra amount of time developing tools like this is that it gives designers runway to just build stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. I like this question. Any plans to scale the combat, quote, intelligence of NPCs to their actual intellect stat?
No.
Okay. We're on the short questions. We'll take one more here. So we kind of got into this a little bit. Will structures like the Blood Fountain stop that pushback ability by the NPC?
Not if it is already engaged. It can.
I think they mean like, can you put your back up to something solid?
Yeah.
So that, you definitely can do that.
You need to do that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Sure.
And if it's at like an angle, you'll kind of slide around it and all that kind of stuff.
Now that the caveat there is that once you are, for that particular ability, once you are locked in, you can't move. So you can't maneuver yourself after you're already being pushed. You have to be somewhat anticipating it. And as long as you have something solid behind you, then you can eat that and just get pushed into the solid object. So, yeah.
Okay, last one here. Can NPCs work together for specific strategies / combos?
Oh, yeah.
Just like players can. Same mechanics, same rules, all that stuff.
In fact, plan on it. They not only can they, but I mean that because I'm long-winded. Again, going back to like, how do you quantify challenge? What makes a challenging game? Well, part of what is going to make Pantheon challenging is not only what individual NPCs are capable of doing, but you're going to see us starting to leverage and push much deeper into the kind of the overall toolkit and kind of the tapestry of their options. And so, and you can expect, like, when you have a situation like we were in earlier, where we're on top of this platform in the Isle of Infinite Storm, we're dealing with a Torn Eyeless, a Torn Stormblade, and a Storm Eldritch. They're each formidable in their own right, but when you get them together, the kind of synergies and things that will be possible is I mean, it's not only a definite thing, and it's not only something that we're already able to quantify it and, you know, show it in action, but it's like, it's one of those things that is inspiring, like, in developing this game. Like, where can you actually take that? How far can that actually go? And what kind of interesting things can you discover, you know, about, we've already shown how NPC factions are real and active in the game world. If an NPC is wandering around and they wander into proximity with another NPC that's on an opposing faction to them, they'll fight it out. In the same way, like, what kind of synergies will happen when, you know, NPCs are moving into proximity with each other and able to, you know, riff off of each other and utilize different things. I mean, it's a really important aspect, one of the kind of DNA level things for Pantheon. Super exciting.
Awesome. Well, you know, as Ben always says, Pantheon is a crowd-funded MMO. If you like what we're doing here, head on over to pantheonmmo.com and, you know, give us a holler. Awesome stream, guys. Kyle, thanks for joining us. Great to have you.
Yeah, man.
Some final words from you two. Any thoughts?
I'm excited. Last night was a lot of fun. You know, I'll say this, like, when you're working on a game, I started as a music composer, you know that, and it's difficult to enjoy music that you write. You can sometimes, but when you've you know, pieced and put, you know, it together and you know it from its beginning and it, you know, all that, it can be difficult to just sit back and enjoy it. When you're building a game, I don't know if, I mean, I'm not going to talk like this is like a common thing, but for me, I'm always aware and always trying to be honest with myself in terms of, like, is Pantheon fun to play? Like, is it fun to play? Is there any reason why I would, you know, if one day I woke up and I was completely disenfranchised and totally divorced from this project with no recollection, would I sit down and play this game and genuinely enjoy it? And I can say that last night, we've reached that point, but last night was a new, if you think of it like an extension ladder, last night was a new rung. I mean, it was a new rung. Some legitimate, I mean, just some belly laughs, some intense, like, butt clench type moments, some real senses of, you know, like, just kind of almost just watching what is unfolding and seeing it all. I mean, it was just a really significant moment, and I know as a team we're really excited. So that's my last word, and onward and upward for real.
Kyle?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well said. It feels like you can sit down and design a real encounter and have it be challenging and fun. And I love sharing this kind of stuff with the stream too. So maybe if this is stuff that you guys like seeing, we can get a bit more technical once in a while on these streams. Just let us know.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, guys.